Mizmor LaDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot asher yarbitzeni, al me menuchot yanachaleni, nafshi shovei, yanacheni v'magle tzedek lema'an shemo. Kam ki helech begitzon mavet, lo irarai ki ataimati. Shiftecha mishantecha hema yenachamoni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorirai di shanta vashemen roshi kosiri vaya ach tov chesed yirdifuni kol yamechayai b'shaveti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. I've chanted for you the words of our 23rd Psalm. In these moments when our hearts are breaking, when we are searching for some degree of comfort, we often turn to the psalmist. And so at this time, as we seek peace and comfort, I ask you to recite these words with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of sky and in the warmth of summer, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. And when we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember Thelma Solomon. To her children, to Doug, Lisa, Rick, and Michael, also to Ginny, Greg, Heidi, and Debbie, to her grandchildren, Chad, Josh, Jamie, Ryan, Alex, Raleigh, Daniel, AJ, Jackson, Cameron, also to Isabella and Ashley, and to her great-granddaughter, Isla, to all the members of the family and so many very dear and cherished friends. We're here today to remember, but also to celebrate the life of your beloved Thelma. We have been taught that birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, from ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, and from loneliness to love. From joy to gratitude. From pain to compassion, and from grief to understanding. From fear to faith. From defeat to defeat to defeat, until, looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Thelma entered into this world on January 6, 1936, and she departed from it almost to the day 81 years later. Her journey began here in Cleveland. She was the younger of two children born to Sam and Anna Weisfeld. Tragically, her older sister, Eleanor, died at the tender age of 7 when Thelma was just a year old. By the time Thelma was in her early teens, she and her parents moved from Cleveland to Bushnell Road in University Heights. Her parents owned and operated Sam's Cut-Right department store, located at 55th and Woodland. Thelma attended Roxborough Junior High and Cleveland Heights High School, where she made friends easily. Her friends, always, as a teen and throughout her adult years, her friends were so very important to her. And many of Thelma's childhood friends remained close throughout the years. These friendships endured, and they lasted until the present. Friends like Charlotte, Nancy, Rita and Maxine, Rosie and Bobby, and so many more, these were the people who meant the world to her. Following her graduation from Cleveland Heights High School, Thelma matriculated to The Ohio State University, and she joined a sorority. She was D Phi E, and somewhere along the way, we're not sure exactly the details, but somehow Thelma met Joe Solomon, an AE Pi man. After a brief courtship, the two were married on September 2nd, 1956, in Cleveland, and they began their lives together, living in an apartment in Warrensville Heights, and then moving to their first home on Stonehaven in South Euclid. In 1958, Thelma and Joe welcomed their first child, Doug, and then every 3 to 4 years, the Solomon family continued to grow. Lisa, Rick, and then Michael. And Thelma's 4 beautiful children completed their Solomon family portrait. Your parents together, they enjoyed life. They had a full and active social life. They had their couples club. They were blessed with many dear and trusted friends. They enjoyed going on cruises and visits to Florida. And with the 4 of you, there were the summers spent swimming at Landerhaven and the family trips with the other couples club's families at Atwood Lake Lodge. There was one trip to Atwood where, when arriving there, your father realized he had left the suitcases at home and your mom made him drive all the way back to get them. Your parents also at the time were what I would call pioneers. They were Jewish Cleveland pioneers when they decided to build a house way out in the country, what was considered by some of their other Jewish family members, I'm sure, as farmland. And so they built a house in a faraway place known as Pepper Pike on Belgrave Road. This was the place that the 4 of you knew as home, and this is where you all grew up. A few months following your dad's 50th birthday, his time with the 4 of you and with your mom was suddenly cut short. At just 50 years young, your father suffered a heart attack and left your mom. They left her a widow at 50 years old. And Thelma, your mom, who was known to be feisty and sometimes stubborn, it seems to me that she used these qualities to help push her through this very terrible, this very challenging time in her life. Your mom was a nurturer, a born caregiver, and so after your dad's passing, your mom had her own father, Sam, move into the home on Belgrave. She cared for your grandfather until the time of his passing in 1989. As we spoke yesterday, it became clear very quickly that the one word that meant the most to her was family. Nothing meant more to her. She was a woman who was all about family. She was family-oriented, and this was her entire world. Your mom's happiest moments in life was when she could gather the family for celebrations or holidays, and to cook for you, to feed you. This gave her nachas. This gave her so much joy. She loved to cook for you, and I must say she enjoyed eating herself. Your mom was a foodie before we even knew the term existed. In rearing their 4 children, Thelma was the disciplinarian, and Joe, well, your dad was a little bit of a pushover. He was easy with you. And while she could be tough on you at times, you always knew where her heart was. And God helped the individual who dared to say anything bad about one of her kids. We'll just say that she was fiercely protective of her children and of her other children as well, of Ginny and Greg and Heidi and Debbie, all 4 whom she welcomed into the family warmly with open arms. Whether it was her weekly Friday lunches with you, Lisa, or the Saturday lunches with Michael, Rick, Doug, and whoever could make it, and everyone was invited, or whether it was the travels, the adventures, her 65th birthday celebration in Las Vegas with her children and their spouses, or the family trips to Seven Springs and Niagara Falls, or those many trips to Israel in 1991 with Rick and Michael, and again in 1993 and 2006 with Lisa, and all of these trips, not just to visit Israel, but to visit relatives, family that she had living in Israel. No matter what, Thelma, at the core of it, understood her blessings. To see her 4 children, and to know that all 4 had married their beshert, their true loves, the ones that they were meant to be with, this gave her the greatest joy. But for Thelma, she was blessed many times over, as she took such great pride and delight in knowing and enjoying her 10 grandchildren. While she hadn't yet met her great-granddaughter, Isla, who was born in Texas just 2 months ago, it must have given your mom and your grandmother the greatest satisfaction and contentment knowing that the next generation had now begun. Thelma was interested in keeping memories alive and in keeping the family stories alive. And I believe it was Debbie, you shared with me, you said that she would tell stories of the family. She would tell stories of Joe's family. Joe was one of 12 children in Poland. Joe's father, Sam, was one of 12 children in Poland. And this, of course, was leading up to and during World War II. And Thelma would tell you, Debbie, and other members of the family how Joe's dad, how her dad, Sam, how her father, Sam, was one of 4 that survived the Nazis. How of the 12 children, 8 perished. And when she told you this story, she would tell it to you with such emotion, with tears in her eyes. It was important for her, for all of you to know these stories, so that you could tell your children and your grandchildren. She believed that these stories, these memories, and keeping these memories alive was important. She had a great sense of humor. She was sharp as a tack when it came to current events. Thelma was a CNN junkie. Sometimes you even called her TNN. She was intrigued with world events, especially if it involved Israel. She also was involved with various organizations, including the Orange Boosters, especially Doug when you were playing football. She was a member of ORT. She loved the Park Sisterhood. The synagogue sisterhood was a great joy. She loved the events. She especially loved the ladies who were involved with Park Synagogue Sisterhood. She exercised at the Beechwood Community Center regularly. And when she finally moved out of the home on Belgrave, she lived independently at the village. It's interesting to know that aside from 3 weeks ago when she had to go to the hospital, she hadn't been in the hospital since the time she gave birth to Michael. She lived a full, healthy, active, and independent life. And the greatest gift that you, her loved ones, gave to her was allowing her and guiding her and helping her to maintain her independence and, most importantly, her dignity. We're taught from our tradition that words which come from the heart enter to the heart. And at this time, I want to call on her son Rick. He has words in his heart that he wishes to share with all of us.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short, as Mom would always nudge me when she was at a funeral and the eulogy went on too long. She would mutter something like, "Enough already." You may have known her as Thelma or T or Mrs. Solomon or Mrs. Sal or Grandma. Nurses and doctors at a Hoosier Medical Center described her as feisty and challenging and stubborn. Me and my siblings had a few other names that I won't go into here, but needless to say, to us she was always Ma or Mom. Thelma was a mom. She raised us during a time when moms stayed home if they could and raised their kids. She arranged the carpools and had a full dinner ready at 5:30 every night. She always wanted to know where her kids were and what they were doing, who they were hanging out with. She always valued her kids having friends, and that never changed. Fortunately, back then, we didn't have cell phones, so she couldn't track us down like she did later in life. Obviously, Dad passing away in 1985 was a big change for her and the rest of the family. She helped take care of her father, Sam, who moved into the house on Belgrave and lived there until 1989 when he passed. He was also feisty and challenging and stubborn, so we know that the apple didn't fall far from the tree there. Once Sam passed, she went to work at Laplace, first at the invitation store known as Affairs for Debonaires, and later at the stocking store called Panache. She loved to tell us about some of the customers who would come in and how they only wanted to buy from her. The reason was that there was always a good deal to be had when Mom was working. I think she was the human version of a loyalty rewards program for frequent shoppers. About 10 years ago, the store closed and she decided it was time to retire. She started to go to Park Sisterhood on Tuesdays with her old friend Rita, who she loved both the people and the programming there. There was lunch with Lisa every Friday, and a group of her kids and grandkids would do Saturday lunch every week as well. I have a photo on my phone from Jack's of 12 of us sitting around a table, and she was just beaming. She always called around to make sure that everyone was invited and no one was left out. That was really important to her. A few quick other thoughts and memories of Mom that she would want us to know. She loved Israel. She made it there 3 times after age 55 to visit her beloved cousins and only surviving members, Neely and Danny, and their kids. She loved the Cleveland Browns. That started when we used to go to the Agans and watch the games on cable TV in the late 70s. Over the last 17 years, she would call me every Sunday at 4:05, and the first words out of her mouth were, "They stink." Thelma also loved her birthday. She would start reminding us in September about her birthday coming up in January, as if we could ever forget. We jokingly called it a national holiday and would count down the number of shopping days that we had left. We had to make a big deal out of her day with a special dinner. She was always 39 and holding. This year we celebrated with a cake in her hospital room. She wasn't eating much the last few weeks, but she wasn't missing out on any cake. When it was a typical year and we were at her birthday dinner, she was always asking about the next reason for us all to get together. "Who's doing Passover this year?" she would ask. Any reason for us all to have a meal together. I'll also always remember how happy she was walking down the aisle for my nephew Alex and Ashley's wedding this past summer. It took a while for her to make it down the aisle between her slow stride and her stopping to say hi along the way to everyone she knew and waving, but no one cared because she was truly thrilled to be there. Finally, she loved the telephone. She would call anytime and ask, "What's going on? How's the family? And what's for dinner?" If you want to honor Mom in some meaningful way, please pick up the phone tomorrow morning at 8:15 and call Bobby Weiss. Those two spoke every morning for our entire lives. The last few weeks have been really challenging and unexpected. This is not the outcome we anticipated when Mom went to the hospital 3.5 weeks ago. I recently read an article in the PD written by Regina Brett. She was talking about having a happiness jar where you write down something each day that made you happy, even on the worst days like today. Well, my happiness jar today will say that I got to be with my siblings and family and friends when we remembered Mom. The last few weeks have been tough but wonderful experience of shedding tears and laughing about what we have been through over the years. We've looked at hundreds of photos discovered in boxes packed away for decades. A lot of that is due to Mom's perseverance in keeping the family together. The other day, Doug remarked, maybe the T in Thelma stands for togetherness. Finally, let's remember Mom and the role she loved, being a mom. Enjoy your time in heaven with Dad and Grandpa Sam and Granny Annie and other friends, watching your favorite TV channel, QVC, enjoying breakfast at Jack's, lunch at Nordstrom's, and a nice steak dinner at Red. They're all open for you now. Don't worry about us. We'll be okay, and in your honor, we'll still be together. Love, Rick and Heidi, Doug and Ginny, Lisa and Greg, and Mike and Debbie.
Thank you, Rick. I want to also call on her grandchildren.
Hello, I am Raleigh. I am the daughter of Lisa and Greg. Okay, bear with me. Whew. Sorry. My beautiful Grandma Thelma taught me many things. The love of food, family, being your authentic self, and always to know where Lisa was. My grandma and I spent a lot of time together over the years, especially together, always keeping tabs on our Lisa. She never would let me forget that when I was a baby, I only wanted to be carried by her. From Hoa to Nordstrom's Cafe to all restaurants not too far from the corner of Cedar and Richmond, we lunched our way every Friday I could remember. When you lunched with her, all diets were off the table, as one of her biggest fears was making sure you were well fed and not hungry. On Friday, January the 13th, my mom, Grandma Thelma, and I had our last lunch together as a trio. Only this time, a little different. However, as always, we didn't stray too far from the corner of Richmond and Cedar. She spoke my name, as she always did, followed by, "How are you doing?" Now in addition, "How is Joe doing?" She grabbed and held my hands, squeezed them with all her might, kissed both of them, and told me how much she loved me. And on January 13th, the three of us said our goodbyes as a trio. Sorry. Whew. Grandma, our time together has been forever stamped in my heart and will be carried with me for the rest of my life. Whew. Sorry. Okay. Now, Grandma, it's your turn to go to sleep. let your guard down and enjoy your time with Grandpa Joe. Don't worry about Mom. I'll keep tabs on her. I love you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I don't want to say too much. I'm Josh Solomon, Doug and Jenny's son. I do want to say that my dear grandmother Thelma was loved by myself, Chad, and Jamie, and all the grandchildren up here. Life with Thelma, or T as she's better known in the family, was almost always colorful, and I think our unique family nickname is evidence alone. Kids and grandkids alike, she was T, as opposed to Grammy or the Bubbies and other grandmothers, you know, as they commonly go by out there. But that's okay, because T was not the average grandma, and my personal favorite nickname was T-Bone. I just want to take this opportunity to mention that it's the team of my father, Doug, along with my mother and aunts and uncles, who know the huge roles they played in doing all they could for T and for everything they did. I'm so grateful. You know, they helped my grandma do her best when she could not do it alone, and how can you possibly thank anyone enough for, you know, being there for your grandmother? And they did more than I'll ever know. So Mom, Dad, Lisa, Rick, Mike, Greg, Debbie, Heidi, and anyone else worth mentioning, you know who you are. Thank you for everything you did for T. Coddling was not always T's style, but we always knew she loved us, and she knew she was loved back. Since I learned of her passing, I haven't spent too much time in sadness, because we spent so much time together in happiness. I'll always cherish walking her down the aisle at Alex's wedding. As Lisa says, she was waving and received like the Queen of England, while I myself was a nervous wreck. I'll never forget how she made everyone smile in that moment, and it's surreal to know she's gone. And we will continue missing her every day. So when I do not wallow in the sadness for my grandmother, I will always smile when I think of T, and almost always laugh, because that's how my life with T has been for as long as I can remember. I love you, Grandma. I'll forever cherish our time together, and miss you always.
When I come to the end of the road and the sun has set for me, I want no rites in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not too long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that we once shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all a part of the Master's plan, a step on the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends we knew, and bury your sorrows in doing good deeds. Miss me, but let me go. As you are able, I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, shochen במרומים, עומסי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במלאות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת תלמה בת שמואל יצחק וחנה, שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תחיה מנוחתה. אנא ברחמים אסתירך, בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותתרור בתרורך ימת נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. O merciful God, who dwells on high, who is full of compassion, grant perfect rest beneath the shelter of your divine presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament. To our dear departed Thelma Solomon, who has gone now to her eternal home, may her soul be bound up in the bonds of eternal life. Grant that her memory inspire us to noble and consecrated living, and to this we answer, Amen. Please be seated. Following the interment at Mount Olive Cemetery, the family will receive visitors at the residence of Lisa and Greg Garson. The address is 32400 Pinebrook Lane in Pepper Pike. They'll receive visitors today until 8:30, and also tomorrow from 1 until 4, and then again in the evening from 7 until 9. Anyone who wishes to possibly make a contribution in memory of Thelma, the family has suggested that you might consider the JFSA Youth Ability Program. On behalf of her family, we thank you for being here with us on this very sad but important day.